Most people think visceral fat is a simple fitness problem. Eat less, move more, do harder cardio, sweat longer. That is the advice most people hear. And for a while it sounds reasonable. But then real life gets involved. You wake up tired, rush into the day, sit longer than you meant to eat whatever is convenient, and by evening you feel too drained to do one more punishing workout. So the plan breaks, not because you are weak, but because the system was built on intensity instead of sustainability. And that is the deeper problem. Visceral fat is not just about appearance. It is the fat stored deeper in the abdomen around internal organs, and it tends to respond badly to the kind of lifestyle many modern people have normalized: high stress, poor sleep, constant snacking, irregular meals, long sitting hours, and energy patterns that swing between overstimulation and exhaustion. In other words, the issue is often not that people are doing nothing. It is that their days are built in a way that quietly works against regulation. This is where a Japanese-inspired approach becomes useful. Not because there is some secret formula, not because discipline is magical, but because many Japanese habit systems are built around something more realistic. Small actions repeated consistently in environments that reduce friction. Less drama, more design. That matters when the goal is reducing visceral fat. Because visceral fat usually does not disappear through one heroic effort. It responds better to rhythm, to steadier insulin patterns, to better sleep, to lower chronic stress, to daily movement that actually gets repeated, to meals that end before the body is overwhelmed, to routines that work with biology instead of fighting it. So tonight, we are not talking about extreme cardio. We are not talking about turning your life into a punishment plan. We are talking about 5 Japanese-inspired habits that can help reduce visceral fat by changing the system around your body, not just attacking the body itself. The first habit is something simple, but surprisingly powerful. Begin the day with light movement before mental overload begins. Most people wait too long to move. They tell themselves they will exercise later after work, after emails, after responsibilities, after the day calms down. But the day rarely calms down. By evening, decision fatigue is already high. Willpower is lower. Stress has accumulated, and movement becomes another task to negotiate with. A more effective approach is to treat morning movement as regulation, not performance. This can be a 10-minute walk outside, a slow stretch routine, a few rounds of stair climbing, even a short walk after waking and drinking water. The point is not calorie burn alone. The point is signaling. You are telling the body that the day has started in motion, not in stagnation. This matters for several reasons. First, light movement improves insulin sensitivity, which helps the body handle energy more efficiently. Second, morning light and movement help regulate circadian rhythm, and better circadian rhythm often improves sleep quality, appetite timing, and stress hormone patterns. Third, when movement happens early, it stops being dependent on motivation later. That is important because the brain loves convenience. If the first hours of your day are designed around chairs, screens, and urgency, then inactivity becomes the default. But if movement happens before the world fully enters your head, the body gets a vote first. A useful, practical version of this habit is extremely small. Put your walking shoes near the bed. Place water where you will see it. Make the first goal 5 minutes, not 40. Once the body begins, momentum often follows. But even if it does not, 5 minutes repeated every day is still a real system. Kaizen works like that. Not by asking for your best day, by improving your normal day. The second habit is reducing meal chaos. Many people do not overeat because they are hungry. They overeat because their day is disorganized. Breakfast is skipped, lunch is rushed, stress rises, energy crashes. Then by late afternoon or night, the body wants fast comfort. Sugary snacks, heavy portions, mindless eating in front of a screen. That pattern matters for visceral fat because when meals are irregular and stress is high, the body often shifts into a cycle of cravings. Poor energy regulation and excess intake that feels automatic. People blame themselves for lacking control, but often the problem began hours earlier. What works better is meal rhythm, not perfection, rhythm. A Japanese-inspired eating pattern often emphasizes moderation, portion awareness, and structure rather than constant intensity. You do not need to imitate any culture perfectly to learn from that principle. The useful part is this: create calmer, more predictable meal timing, and make your food environment less impulsive. That might mean eating breakfast with some protein instead of relying only on coffee. It might mean keeping lunch simple but stable. It might mean deciding your evening meal before the evening appetite makes the decision for you. Less chaos, less rebound eating, and that changes more than people think. Because once meal timing becomes more stable, several things improve at the same time. Energy crashes become less dramatic. Cravings become easier to interpret. Decision fatigue around food gets reduced. And perhaps most importantly, you stop entering the evening biologically primed to overconsume. This is where psychology matters. A hungry, stressed, overstimulated brain does not make elegant decisions. It seeks relief, fast relief. That is why highly processed foods and sugary snacks become so attractive at the end of a chaotic day. They offer immediate reward when self-regulation is already weakened. So a practical system helps more than good intentions. Prepare one default breakfast. Choose 2 or 3 simple lunch options you rotate. Keep dinner portions visually moderate. Use smaller bowls or plates if it helps. Sit down when you eat. Remove the phone from the meal. These details matter because attention changes intake. When you eat while distracted, the brain often registers less satisfaction, which makes it easier to keep going past what the body actually needed. The third habit is walking after meals, especially after dinner. This is one of the most underrated tools for reducing visceral fat without extreme exercise. Most people think only intense workouts count. But the body does not measure effort the way our ego does. The body responds to repeated signals. And a short walk after eating is one of the clearest, lowest friction signals you can give it. Why? Because post-meal walking helps the body use glucose more effectively. Instead of sitting immediately after eating, which encourages sluggishness and larger blood sugar spikes, you create a small metabolic transition. You are not trying to burn off dinner through force. You are helping the body process energy in real time. This is a very different mindset. You are not punishing the meal. You are completing it. A 10 to 15-minute walk after dinner can be enough to make a real difference over time. Around the apartment, outside the building, up and down stairs, even walking indoors if the weather is bad. What matters is consistency, not scenery. And there is another benefit. Walking after dinner reduces the emotional gravity of the evening. It interrupts the common sequence of eat, sit, scroll, snack, repeat. Once that loop is broken, many secondary habits improve automatically. Less screen grazing, less dessert out of boredom, less mental heaviness before bed. This is why small movement matters more than people expect. It changes the shape of the evening. The fourth habit is protecting sleep as a fat regulation habit, not just a recovery habit. A lot of people think sleep matters for energy, mood, maybe productivity. All true. But sleep also influences appetite regulation, stress hormones, insulin sensitivity, and late-night self-control. Which means poor sleep quietly supports the exact conditions that make visceral fat harder to reduce. When sleep is short or inconsistent, hunger signals often become less reliable. Cravings increase. The body becomes more stress reactive. And the next day, people often reach for more sugar, more caffeine, and more convenience food just to stay functional. So, if someone is trying to reduce visceral fat while sleeping 5 or 6 chaotic hours, the system is working against them. This does not mean you need a perfect sleep ritual. It means you need a repeatable one. A Japanese-inspired lifestyle principle often values transition, clear boundaries, a beginning, a middle, an end. You can apply that here. Create a small closing sequence at night that makes sleep easier to enter. Dim the lights. Stop eating earlier when possible. Put the phone farther away. Take a warm shower. Prepare tomorrow's clothes. Lower the volume of the environment. Do the same few things in the same order. The brain learns patterns faster than promises. So instead of saying, I should sleep earlier, design a sequence that makes earlier sleep more likely. That is discipline in a more useful form, not forcing the body, guiding it. The fifth habit is reducing chronic stress through calmer, daily pacing. This may sound less direct than exercise or food, but it matters deeply for visceral fat. When stress stays high for too long, the body behaves differently. Appetite can become more chaotic. Cravings become sharper. Sleep gets lighter. Recovery gets delayed. And cortisol, which is useful in the right rhythm, becomes unhelpful when it remains elevated too often. This does not mean stress alone causes visceral fat in some simplistic way, but it absolutely changes the conditions that make fat regulation harder. And many people try to solve that with more force, more restriction, more guilt, more punishment. Usually that backfires. A more sustainable approach is to reduce unnecessary strain in the structure of the day. Build pauses. Eat without screens. Walk without audio sometimes. Stop multitasking during meals. Create 2 or 3 moments where the nervous system is not being asked to perform. Small decompression points matter because the body does not only change through workouts, it changes through the hormonal environment you live in all day. This is where the idea of Japanese-inspired discipline becomes especially useful. Discipline is not treated as a dramatic emotional state. It is treated as a sequence that lowers resistance, a routine, a layout, a repeated order that protects your better choices before your tired self has a chance to abandon them. So if you want to reduce visceral fat without extreme cardio, here is what that can look like in real life. Wake up and move for 5 or 10 minutes before the day fully starts. Eat on a steadier rhythm so the evening does not become a biological rebound. Walk after dinner instead of collapsing straight into the couch. Build a short night sequence that supports sleep. Create pockets of calm in the day so stress is not constantly driving your behavior from underneath. None of these habits are dramatic. That is exactly why they work. They do not require a heroic personality. They require structure, and structure scales better than motivation. That is the part many people miss. They are waiting to feel ready for change, but readiness is unreliable. Environment is more reliable. Sequence is more reliable. Repetition is more reliable. If your shoes are visible, walking is easier. If meals are planned, overeating is less reactive. If the evening includes a walk, the night changes. If the lights go down at the same time, sleep comes with less friction. If your day contains fewer unnecessary spikes of chaos, your body has fewer reasons to cling to emergency patterns. Over time, this does something important to your identity. You stop seeing health as a project that begins only when you become more intense. You start seeing it as something shaped quietly by daily design. And that shift matters because visceral fat usually reflects accumulated patterns, not one isolated mistake. So the answer is rarely one extreme intervention. It is better systems. It is also worth remembering that progress here is often slow enough that people underestimate it. A person may feel like nothing is happening because the changes are not dramatic. But better sleep, steadier appetite, less evening snacking, more daily walking, and calmer energy regulation all compound beneath the surface before they become obvious on the outside. That is how Kaizen works. It does not ask for a transformation story. It asks for a slightly better pattern repeated long enough to become normal. So, if you are trying to reduce visceral fat, do not begin by asking, "What is the hardest plan I can survive?" Ask a better question. What is the simplest structure I can actually repeat? Maybe it is a 10-minute morning walk. Maybe it is protein at breakfast. Maybe it is no phone during meals. Maybe it is a short walk after dinner. Maybe it is dimming the lights 30 minutes earlier. Choose one, then protect it, not because it is perfect, because it is repeatable. And when something is repeatable, it becomes part of the environment. When it becomes part of the environment, it stops costing so much mental energy. And when healthy choices stop feeling like constant internal battles, the body finally gets the consistency it needs to respond. That is the calmer truth behind real change. You do not need to attack your body. You need to support it more intelligently. A better metabolism is often built through better timing. Better appetite control is often built through better rhythm. Better fat regulation is often built through fewer extremes, not more. So tonight, do not make a grand promise. Just choose one habit that makes tomorrow easier. Walk early, eat with structure, walk after dinner, protect sleep, lower unnecessary stress. Small actions, quietly repeated. That is how the body changes without chaos. That is how discipline becomes sustainable. And that is often how visceral fat starts going down, not through one exhausting burst of effort, but through a life that is finally designed in a way the body can trust.